Hey, welcome back. Thanks for watching. I kind of wanted to give an update on how my dad's estate was handled after his passing. So to review or to remind you, he died in the end of May in 2025. Before he passed away, he was able to tell us the passwords to his phone and his email, and tell us basic things about him and the bills that they had and the different accounts that he had. He was able to tell all that. So that really helped us moving forward once he passed to be able to access these accounts and to access his email and to access these different vehicles that he had that he was telling us about. Which reminds me, your family needs to know that before you're on your deathbed. Your family needs to know this stuff, because we don't know when we're going to pass. And thankfully my dad had a week's time, where he was cognizant and he was aware and he was able to talk, and we were able to communicate very simply and easily. But that's not always the case for everybody, and so we can't necessarily wait and think we're going to be on our deathbed and then be able to tell these needed things that the people, your heirs, are going to need to know. He did have a will. He had a power of attorney. He had a end of life care, what do they call that, a medical directive. He had all that already planned and ready. And so when it came time to implement those documents, I guess you can say, why that was already prepared. And the end of life or the medical directive, he was fully aware and cognizant of what we were doing with that. And that was, he spoke with the doctor himself about that. That was nothing necessarily a decision that we as a family made separate from him, but he was involved in that decision. And so all these things were prepared ahead of time. But we really never ran into any problems with any of the utilities or any of the entities with a pension or life insurance or any of these things. We didn't run into any problems except perhaps the internet provider here in town. Mom had to go around and around with them for I don't know how many calls it took, because I don't know if they were just too dense to understand what was going on. I do think now that I'm making this video in September that everything's fixed as far as that goes. But she really never had any trouble. When we called utilities, and everyone that I spoke with was very sympathetic. When I would mention, that my dad's passed away and we're trying to get this into my mom's name, everyone was very sympathetic. It wasn't like I was talking to a robot. It wasn't like I was talking to some soulless person. But everyone that I spoke with seemed to be genuinely concerned that, and caring that my father had passed. But we really didn't have any trouble switching the insurance or the the electric bill or any of those things. We didn't have any trouble doing that. My dad had a little life insurance policy that he had when he was working, and it just carried over. He wasn't paying a premium on it. It was all it was a paid up plan. And it was really easy to call that number and get that information. We didn't really have to jump through a bunch of hoops to prove that he died. I do think that we did have to send a death certificate, but they gave us the information prior to us sending in the information. I just was talking to someone on the phone. And as far as Dad did have a small pension that I don't think he even knew he had. And Fidelity reached out to us about that. And we did have to send in some documentation for that to get that benefit. But now I will say that money was not necessarily a life changer. There was a nice amount there, but not anything that was, hundreds of thousands of dollars. But they reached out to us that because we didn't even know that he had that. And like I said, I don't think he did either. But that was really easy, other than we did have to send in quite a bit of paperwork, which was easily gotten. I think a marriage certificate and I think the death certificate. There were a few other documents that Mom had to turn in to get that pension benefit, but that was very simple. As far as getting the house in Mom's name only, we went up to the courthouse and got that done. That was very easy. And a lot of this was just done by showing a death certificate, and some people even did it without that. But it just was interesting, the interactions that we had with people after his death. When we got the car titled, I bought Dad's truck, and as such, we had to title it in Mom's name, and then she sold it to me. And that probably, it wasn't difficult, but it was time consuming to get that done. But it wasn't really anything hard. It just was a lot of time waiting and getting the right paperwork done, because we had to transfer it to her name, and then she had to make a bill of sale to me, and which took a couple trips to the driver's facility. But I can't really think of anything that we had trouble with. We did have trouble with Social Security originally because they said that mom owed them money, but they wouldn't explain why. And when mom tried to get an explanation, she couldn't get anybody to answer her. But in the month or two afterwards, why she did get a letter saying that she wasn't going to owe anything. But they never did explain why they come out and said that she was going to owe something. So that was a little frustrating. I made a video on that. But it really, the whole process was really much simpler than I thought it would be. And again, everybody that we spoke with was sympathetic. Well, I say everybody, for the most part. Everybody was sympathetic to our plight and understood and worked and done their best. And I know for the dad had a health insurance benefit that we had to call and get some information on. And I remember speaking with that gentleman specifically, and he just went over everything in every little detail that he could to really explain the benefit that was behind that. But all in all, it was it was a nice reminder that, that people are, there are people that do care out there. And yeah, we get frustrated with call services or call centers and whatnot. But generally speaking, everyone that we spoke with was very polite and kind in our situation. But that being said, the Social Security was frustrating because it was just so long to be on hold and then to wait for them to call back. Yeah, it was frustrating. But all in all that got calmed down and situated and settled. And mom is now getting the survivor benefit of dad's Social Security. And that's been settled. And the money that he had in his IRA just transferred directly over to mom. I think her name was on it to begin with. But we just needed a death certificate for that, and that got transferred easy. So anyway, other than really Social Security being frustrating for a while and the internet provider in town being frustrating for a while, it really wasn't that difficult. It was just time consuming at times, and just trying to think of all these different things that we had to contact and get changed. And all in all, it wasn't too bad. And on top of the grieving and doing and having to deal with not having dad, the situation of changing everything over really wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. So, but I do think it was very helpful that dad had time and took time to explain the different bills that they had and his different passwords and how to access different accounts. That really helped. And I want you to take away from that it's very important to be prepared for that time and to have something spelled out somewhere where somebody in your family can get to it very simply so that when the time comes, they can access that. So with that, I'll say God bless. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. My button's not working again.